Welcome, this is Josh Rees with Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. For more information about our church, please visit our website, milehighchurch.org.
525,600 minutes. That's what we've just been given with the start of a brand new year. And we get to ask ourselves, what am I going to do with those 525,600 minutes? How am I going to make the best of them? Well, first of all, I'm going to open my iPad and use my notes, right? That's what I'm going to do. This is a great opportunity to feel the newness of a whole new year and be present to it in a whole new way. I remember back in 1984, sitting in our former sanctuary, and Dr. Roger was speaking, and he was talking about starting the new year off right. And I don't remember the exact words he used, but I remember something came awake in me that year. And I had a huge intention just rise up to change my life for the better that year. And I managed to do it. And things shifted dramatically for me after that moment. And I have an intention for us that that's what happens today. It may not be something I say necessarily. It may be a song we hear, or the way Dr. Patty prayed, or a connection we have with someone else. But I have an intention that for each one of us today, it's a defining moment that supports not only our year, but our life in a better way. And one of the things that I like about this time of year for us is that our teaching doesn't have a ton of traditions that we follow, but this time of year is one that we follow in alignment with other centers, communities, and churches in our movement. We are part of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And our Centers for Spiritual Living has centers and communities all over the world like this. And many of them do what we call go back to basics in January. It's an opportunity as a community to really delve a little more deeply into our teaching, what we're all about. And what I love about it is that it serves people who are fairly new to the community or the teaching, have a deeper understanding, a better understanding of the basic ideas. With all the Sundays that we'll do here in January, Josh and I will both be speaking individually, and we have one Sunday we're going to do together where we'll be outlining the basics of our teaching throughout this whole month. So for new people, if you're fairly new to our community, it's a great chance to learn more. And it's also a great chance for some of us to introduce people to our teaching, to our church, who we might think would be interested. We can always point them to these talks online or point them to these Sundays. And for those of us who've been around a long time, it's a great opportunity to continue our evolutionary journey into deepening our understanding of life and God and prayer and all of the things that we work on together here. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm so excited to be doing Back to Basics once again. Josh and I have chosen the theme of vibrant spiritual living for this year's Back to Basics. And so all month long, our talks are going to point to vibrant spiritual living, and we look forward to that. And today I'm starting out talking about God, getting good with God, embracing your infinite nature. Now, I'm starting out right away with something that I would consider to be a bit of a koan or a little bit of a puzzle. Getting good with God. In our teaching, we believe that what God is this pervasive presence that is so inherent in everything and everyone, that there has never been a moment in our existence where we haven't been good with God. The challenge for us, though, is to do the inner work and to evolve ourselves such that we are good with our sense of the divine, but also always willing to evolve our sense of the divine, willing to go deeper, willing to get more clear and more connected, to feel more connected to that which we believe God to be. And so in our teaching, in our faith tradition, we believe that's a constant evolutionary journey. And I've often joked that as a minister even, if I ever came here onto this platform and said to you, I've figured God out, I know all about it now, that you should probably dismiss me as one of your ministers. That the reality is that if I'm really being a good minister, I am practicing what I preach, and I am continually evolving my own sense of God. And how that evolutionary journey occurs is that we bump up against things we don't like, people we don't like, conditions we don't like, challenges, illness. We bump up against beauty. We bump up against greatness. We bump up against all sorts of things. And the reality of life as we see it is that all of it is an invitation to evolve our sense of the divine. And for me, that is the priority experience in my life. Ella Wheeler Wilcox wrote a beautiful poem called Getting Back to God, and I think she articulates it very well. Everything she says in the poem that she would name as a condition, it's all getting back to God. It's all getting back to God. And as we walk through our lives and yearn for deeper understanding, greater security, more love and connection, one of the primary things we've got to do is to, I believe, make our relationship with our divine nature a priority. It can't take a back seat. It can't be like something I'll get to later. Let me solve this problem, and then once I solve this problem, I'll do a little digging about God. It's got to be the other way around, I think. It's got to be, and the fact that you're here in this room with us or you're watching online tells me that, like me, you have a desire to deepen your awareness about the nature of the universe, or you wouldn't be here. So the question becomes, in this new year, as we begin this 525,600 minutes, how big is that priority? And are we willing to put our money where our mouth is and not just come to church and think about it on Sundays, but take it into our daily life? The willingness to say, okay, in that challenge right there, how do I bring forward my awareness of the divine as I deal with that? As I look out at the world and see that challenge, how do I bring forward my awareness of the divine and deal with that? And so it demands that we become willing to look at what our definition of the divine is, of God is. When I first came into this teaching, I was not happy about God that was being articulated to me. And I didn't call it God for a very long time. I just read the book Illusions. I think I was calling it The Great Is at that moment, or Source, or something like that. Eventually, I got to the point now where when I say God, I mean something completely different than what I had been taught. And a lot of that was born out of a natural, inherent sense of it from being a child and being raised here in Colorado with the beauty of nature, going off to the mountains every weekend with my family in Garfield to our cabin, and just finding myself wandering through the woods and looking at trees and fishing and being in ponds, and realizing that for me, I had an intuitive sense that whatever God was, it was an acceptance of everything and everyone. I somehow knew that as a child. And I don't think I'm special or different. I'm going to guess that most of us, when we start out contemplating the divine, we have an inherent sense of that. Like, I knew God doesn't prefer a pine tree over an aspen tree. It's all the same. And so I walk through my life with that belief, but this yearning to know more. And then my little friend Ginger told me that she went to this place called church. And I said, I want to go. And so she took me to her Christian church in our little town. And I loved the community. And I went to Sunday school. And I was fascinated by that Bible they talked about and that Jesus guy they talked about. And at first, they told me God was love. And I was like, yeah, I know that. And then they said, God loves everyone. Well, but except those people over there. And maybe not those people over there. They're sinners, and those people aren't practicing the right faith, and those and they lost me at that point. I was lost, and I left feeling very disillusioned, because to me, the God that created this universe could not distinguish between a man or a woman, or a person of this faith or of that faith. But boy, I learned as I grew older through history that people sure fight a lot over religion, don't they? And who's got the right version of God. And maybe some of us have even been pressured by people in our lives who think we're at the wrong place to be learning about God because we're in this place, or we're in the wrong tradition, and they give us crap for it, or they push us, or they argue with us, or they want to be right, or they want to make themselves right. So it's an ongoing challenge that can be very devastating and in some ways kind of funny at times. I do have this one funny debate that occurred that I want to share with you today. It occurred in 2009. It was a church sign debate between the Our Lady of Martyrs Catholic Church and the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. It was in a small southern town, and they were arguing over whether or not dogs go to heaven. And the Catholics were trying to have a little fun with it, and the Presbyterians were taking it real seriously. Here's how it came down. So the Catholics put on their sign, "All dogs go to heaven." And the Presbyterian church across the street said, "Only humans go to heaven, read the Bible." So the Catholic Church put on their sign, "God loves all his creations, dogs included." And the Presbyterians put, "Dogs don't have souls. This is not open for debate." So the Catholics said, "Catholic dogs go to heaven, Presbyterian dogs can talk to their pastor." So the Presbyterian church put up, "Converting to Catholicism does not magically grant your dog a soul." So the Catholic church put up, "Free dog souls with conversion." The Presbyterians then said, "Dogs are animals. There aren't any rocks in heaven either." And the Catholics got the last word in by saying, "All rocks go to heaven." Yes, I think that was a good debate, wasn't it? Yes. And I think the Catholics won that one in this case, because we believe, like I think they were trying to get at, all of it is God. It's all available. Heaven is available through all beings and all things, and God is available in it all. But that can be a very hard belief system to take on, even for us who claim to live out of oneness. See, we know we're not living in oneness entirely when we think things like God favors one political party over another, or favors a sports team over another, or favors this group of people over another, or favors this activity more than another. In the moments that we start to fall into the sense of diversity that includes some and discludes other, we are practicing a way of thinking and being that is not the oneness that our teaching stands in. And it's not the easiest thing to practice. I totally acknowledge it. In order to practice it, a lot of times we debate with ourselves and other people, just like that, just like they did. But in reality, what we begin to do is we begin to see that our work is always to bring ourselves back to oneness, which can be challenging in any time of history or any time of our life. Our founder is a man named Ernest Holmes. You've probably, if you've been around here for a while, you hear about him. We quote him a lot. We don't worship Ernest Holmes like people in Christianity worship, say, Jesus or Buddha. We believe Ernest Holmes, as the founder of our teaching, deserves great respect, and we share his writings and we share his thoughts and think he was a great spiritual leader. And if you took a class from us or participated with our ministerial team or our practitioners, you might find that there are times we don't always totally agree with everything Ernest Holmes said. And that was what really got me as a teenager when I came here. Oh, I'm free to think what I want. I'm free to ask questions. I'm free to be here and not necessarily have to agree with everything they say. Wow, that's new. And so that was really an opening for me. And that still remains true for us. Ernest Holmes, it's interesting, as I was looking at his history, he was born in 1887, and he wrote his first book in 1918. It was published in 1919. Now think about what was going on in 1918 historically. Ernest Holmes was 31 years old, and he wrote his first spiritual book. And in 1918, there was the great Spanish flu pandemic. By all estimates, well, actually, I shouldn't say by all estimates. There are many estimates, but the most popular estimate is that about 50 million people lost their lives to the Spanish flu worldwide. That was about a third of the population of Earth at that time, died from the Spanish flu. In addition to that, World War I was going on. Now, it ended in November of 1918, but lives, huge numbers of lives were lost from that World War also. In America, in 1918, I read an article recently that was saying there was this huge urge towards new thought, our teaching, and spiritualism, because just about everyone had lost someone they loved. They lost children and uncles and aunts and parents and friends and neighbors, and through one thing or another, most people had someone they loved die in some way, shape, or form. And people were desperate to connect with their loved ones, and were desperate to understand the spiritual nature of things, and were willing to think outside the box. And so spiritualism had a huge growth during that time. Spiritualism being defined as seances and table tappings and psychic readings and things like that, because people were desperate to go and find out where their loved ones were. And as you might imagine, at the same time, charlatans began to grow and develop and make money off of it. But there were true people doing spiritual work, and our founder, Ernest Holmes, was rather interested in that, but he was also interested in the universe. And so he began writing and expressing himself in that way. His first book was Creative Mind. It's been printed and reprinted a number of times. And in 1998, when it was being reprinted, Elaine Sonn, who was the managing editor of Science of Mind at that time, described the book in this way. She said, "Creative Mind is the first book Ernest Holmes wrote. It's a powerful book, bold in its simplicity, inspired in its clarity. Ernest Holmes was a firm believer in simplicity. His life was dedicated to exploring the wisdom of the ages through many disciplines, including psychology, spiritualism, religion, medicine, and philosophy, and melding those diverse elements into a practical way of living life more abundant. One of his favorite sayings, according to his friend Reginald Armour in Ernest Holmes the Man, was, 'Let's keep it simple.' And that's what this book reveals, the simple truth that sets us free. That simple truth that Holmes believes set us free was that God is all there is. There's no other substance in this universe but God. Everything, the animate, the inanimate, every being is God in form, is God in expression. Everything that's occurring. Now, that sounds simple, and as I said earlier, it can be challenging to practice. Holmes said in the beginning of this book, and I think it was really relevant for him in 1918, and it's really relevant now. Listen to this. He said that the time is at hand. We are in the greatest age of all history. We are in the age of the unifying of all people and all things into the ever-present one. This little book is an attempt to explain what each soul must discover for himself, that he stands in the midst of an eternal creative power which presses itself around his own thought and casts back to him, glorified, all that he thinks. If it awakens within the consciousness of one single individual the realization that the mind of the universe, which is the only mind that there is his own mind, that the creative power of this mind is his also, that the manifestation of this mind is his own individuality, that the love and power and peace of this mind is within himself, it will not be written in vain. May it then do much in simplifying and bringing to light some of the deeper mysteries and meanings of life. Ernest Shurtleff Holmes, October 1, 1918. So if we are, as he said, and I think most generations would say, this is the greatest moment in history, how that moment is met by those who are willing to practice and walk in that deeper walk with the divine, then shapes and molds that moment, not only for each individual, but for all of us. As each one of us does our part to do what we talk a lot about here, and I talk a lot about here, which is to practice meditation and prayer, which is to be about these practices every day. That's one of the ways that we don't just talk about God or think about God. We allow ourselves to have an experience of the divine. As each one of us is contemplative in looking at our lives and wondering how we could see the spiritual truth behind the conditions that show up. As each one of us continues to come into communities like this, where the vibration and the resonance of the field that is available to us literally uplifts us, and we do that over and over again as a part of the discipline of our practice to discover God, then we contribute to the well-being, the spiritual well-being of ourselves and everyone on the planet, because we've taken time in our life to get good with God in our own consciousness, to become more aware of God, to become conscious and conscientious about the divine. Abraham Lincoln said to us, "My great concern is not whether God is on our side. My great concern is to be on God's side." This is an invitation for us to, on this first Sunday of the year, dedicate our year and ourselves to saying, I'm going to get on God's side. I'm going to do what I need to do and practice what I need to practice so that I can see the divine more profoundly in life and in myself. And so the first part of that is also discovering the divine in the world. Ashley Brilliant says so beautifully in Pot Shots, "The existence of God has already been proven to my satisfaction by the existence of everything else." And that's what we believe here. Do we need proof? If we need proof that God exists, we need to just look at everything else. As many of you know, 2021 was not my favorite year. I had a really hard year last year. And I had a moment where I was in great emotional pain. And I was trying to meditate, and all I could do was cry. And just cry for the losses and the pain that was happening. And I was in one of those moments where my pain was so deep that I began to pray to see God. Please let me just see God. Let me feel the presence of God. Please let me know God. Please help me to feel more comfort during this time of great pain. And I desperately wanted to see God. Please, I was like, I want to see God. I want to know God. And when I got quiet for a moment, that voice, that same voice that told me to be a minister and told me to come back to Mile High and has told me to do things all my life that always turn out to be right, that same voice said something just that Ernest Holmes would have said, keep it simple. It said, open your eyes. And when I opened my eyes, there I was in the same room I meditate, my office all the time, with the same things around me. And that voice said, everything you see is God. You are in the midst of me, and I am in the midst of you. Stop yearning to see me because I'm right here. You're swimming in me. You're breathing me. You're living in me. That person who hugged you yesterday, who called you, who wrote that note, who reached, that's me. That's me. Your comfort is at hand. I'm not some far off thing that's going to comfort and take care of you. I'm right here. And it shifted everything for me. I totally get that the conditions of life sometimes can be hard to see beyond and to see God in the midst of them, or to see how they could be perfect in their so imperfect ways, or how people could be perfect in their so imperfect ways. And yet, those of us who are practicing this walk with knowing oneness and living oneness and seeing God in all have the great chance to do what Ella Wheeler Wilcox talked about. Getting back to God. In the midst of this person or this condition or this situation, how can I get back to God? How can I see the God in this? Where is God in this? And allow myself to trust and know that it's right there. It's here. It's a presence, not a person. See, to distinguish this, I want to state really clearly, we don't believe there's a guy in the sky out there, a white guy with a white beard, aging, one of our wisdom keepers, with a list that he's keeping track of everybody. That's Santa Claus. That's not God. We don't believe that God plays favorites or punishes anyone, that God likes one of us more than another and therefore rewards us while punishing someone else. We don't believe that God doles out lessons to trip us up. Well, you need a lesson. I'm going to give you a lesson today. We don't believe that God operates that way. We don't believe that God is far off and only reachable by a few select holy beings. We believe we're in the midst of it, right here and right now. Holmes says to us, we are not dealing with a negative as well as a positive power, not two powers, but one. A power that sees neither good nor evil as we see it. It knows only that it is all. And since it is all, it creates whatever is given it. So we don't believe that God is fighting some battle between good and evil. It and the devil, or it and Satan. We don't believe that. We believe it is all. And that through the activities of human beings, we sometimes create together as groups, collectives, or individuals, things that aren't so pleasant, things that we wish were different. And that each one of us has a hand in the creative mind that we're a part of to recreate, to contribute good towards things that are challenging. But in order to do that, we've got to claim our godliness. And that goes to the next part, discovering the divine in ourselves. If there was one resolution that I would recommend for all of us, it would be to choose this year to recognize my divine nature. I'm often saddened and surprised at the thoughts that rise up from the depth of me about myself, or the things that come out of other people's mouths about themselves. The things we think about ourselves. I'm an idiot. I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. I just really messed that up. It's never going to fix itself. It's broken forever. I could go into a lot of really deep, dark thoughts we think about ourselves. But I do believe that when we start to discover our own divine nature, it's not that we don't make mistakes or need to redo things, or that some of our dreams don't come true, or they take on a different version, or that things always go our way. It's that we are different in the midst of that. To think of ourselves as divine and remember that we are an expression of the divine. Now, some people outside of this faith criticize us because they say, oh, those people over there, they think they're God. I don't think I'm the one and only God that can create things, but I do think that I am the presence of God, and that everyone that exists is, and that we are co-creating together on this planet. We are contributing by our thoughts and our actions and our energy. We are all co-creating because we are all cells in the body of the divine. And each one of us has accountability and responsibility to be the healthiest cell that we can be, to vibrate the healthiest energy we can vibrate into the world, to discover the places within ourselves where we're critical of ourselves, where we don't give ourselves a break, where we are unloving and unkind to ourselves and others, and confront ourselves lovingly on it and say, you know what? If I am God in form, that's not how I treat myself. If I am God in form, I'm compassionate and kind to myself. I accept that I will make mistakes. I accept that things will not always go perfectly. And I walk through this life choosing to be about my spiritual awakening and discovering my divine nature, even in crisis, even in challenge, even when my dreams don't come true. Because I know this is who and what I am. And I am awakened to spiritual experience however it may show up. And I'm awakened to seeing God in the midst of any condition, in the midst of my image in the mirror, in the midst of my life. My most recent profound spiritual experience occurred at a Barry Manilow concert. Not only because Barry is quite dreamy, still for me, But I had told my husband, I admit, I didn't ask you, did I? I bought these tickets to the Barry Manilow concert and then said, guess what? We're going to see Barry Manilow. He's like, great. But as the trooper and kind husband he was, he came along with me. And it was a great Christmas concert. Barry still got it going. But my spiritual experience occurred as he started singing that iconic song written by Bruce Johnston, I Write the Songs. And the more he sang, even now I'm feeling it, I started just getting these chills with the music, and I started hearing the voice of the divine. I know it's a song that's about music. It's supposed to be a song from music standpoint. Like, I write the songs that make the young girls sing. I write the songs of love and everything. It's from music standpoint. But for me, the words began to be from God's standpoint. And then the bridge, here's how the bridge goes. Oh, my music makes you dance and gives you spirit to take a chance. And I wrote some rock and roll so you can move. Music fills your heart. Well, that's a real fine place to start. It's from me, it's for you, it's from you, it's for me. It's a worldwide symphony. Oh, I got chills on that too. It just felt like a voice from the divine reminding me of the connection and the oneness. And it worked for me. And it can work for any of us. That's what I'm talking about, is watching in the days ahead for unique places where something opens up in us and we feel the connection. It can be a rock and roll song. It can be a quiet song. It can be a song at church. It can be something that someone says on TV. It can be a book that falls out in front of us and we're reading it. Somehow, what we get to accept, that we are wired for our divine nature to rise forth in us and in our lives. And our role right now, today, is to simply say yes to it. I'm going to be awakened to see the divine in me and as me, to claim myself as that divine presence. I love this story from George Burns. He wrote it in a book called In 100 Years, 100 Stories. And he talks about the movie that he was most worried about that he made was the movie that was the biggest hit, and it was the movie Oh God. He says, the minute I accepted the role, I started to panic. Should I be the one to play God? We're both about the same age, he said. But we grew up in different neighborhoods. What kind of voice should I use? I was very confused. So I looked up and hollered, how do you play God? And there was no answer. The closer we got to the starting date, the more nervous I got. Then one night, I realized no matter what, I couldn't be criticized. Nobody had ever seen him. So who would know if I played him right or wrong? That changed my whole attitude, he said. I couldn't wait to get going. The week before shooting began, I rehearsed day and night. I got so into the role that one night, when I said my prayers, I realized I was talking to myself. That's what I think we're asked to do. Just what George had to do to play that role. If you were asked today, which I'm asking you to do, to play the role of God, how would you play it? How would you show up to that person at the store? How would you show up to your family? How would you show up as you walk out of this lobby? How would you show up to that challenge that you've been wondering about? How does God show up to that? Full of limited thinking and anger and smallness? Or full of possibility and light? And let's see what we can do here. That's what happens when we embrace our divine nature. We become like George Burns, for gosh sakes. And we play the role of God. Not the all-powerful, I'm bossing you around God. Not the God out there. The God here. That just knows that it knows. Set an intention to get back to God this week. Let's begin this year off right. Getting back to God. Please join me as we pray together. Joyfully, we just step into this glorious space of invitation and allow ourselves to feel the energy in this room that is cast not only by the words and the songs and the prayers we've heard, the presence of everyone around us, but is the reality of life, that this presence that God is everywhere. We're breathing it. It's breathing us. Right here and right now, it is every activity of our body temple. It's every feeling and emotion that we have. It's every thought that we think. As Holmes says, we are the mind that God is. We're in the midst of it. It is in the midst of us. We are in intimate connection and union in and as the source of our being. And we write the songs of our life. We write the joyous songs. We write the sad songs. We write the songs that fill us up and inspire us. And whatever song of life we're in right now, we just allow ourselves to be okay with it. If it's a song of grief or a song of joy or a song of possibility or a song of confusion or wonder, a song of sadness, even a song of anger, we are in the midst of it and knowing that right here and right now, whatever song is playing itself through our soul, this God presence is the companion energy, is the energy that can comfort and support us, and it shows up as we invite it in consciously through our daily practice. It shows up as we see it and claim it and allow ourselves to be presenced by it. I affirm and accept for each one of us this day that the presence of the divine in our world and as us shows itself brilliantly, boldly, and powerfully this week. We are convinced, like never before, that we walk in and as the divine, and we walk forward in love and light. I accept this, affirm this, proclaim this as truth, and I give thanks for it right now, accepting that as it is spoken, it is done, releasing this prayer into the action of the law that makes it so, and simply saying, and so it is. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. To make a donation, please visit milehighchurch.org.